Best bites forever.
Hey everyone, thanks for joining me today. In this video, I'm going to show you how to make this classic lasagna. I'm starting off here with a hot pan, and in the pan I have 3 to 4 tablespoons of olive oil. I've also added in about 1¼ cups of diced onions and 5 minced cloves of garlic. I'm going to sprinkle that with about 1/2 teaspoon of kosher salt and stir it around to coat the onions and the garlic with the oil and salt. Then I'm going to add in a little bit of freshly ground black pepper. Don't worry, because I am going to put all of these measurements in a link down below. I'm going to sweat my onions, which means that I'm just going to cook them around until they start to become translucent. Once they get there, I'm going to add in my meat. Today I am using some ground beef, and it is an 85/15, and I'll get right back to that. I'm also adding a little bit of kosher salt and black pepper on top of it, probably about a teaspoon of kosher salt. So you'll notice that I add in a little bit of salt and pepper after each ingredient. That's just to help distribute the salt evenly throughout, and it's going to give you a better flavor at the end. I'm going to continue cooking this meat until it is brown, and then I'm going to add in my cans of tomatoes. Today I am using 2 14-ounce cans of diced organic tomatoes, and I want to stir these around just a little bit. Back to that beef that I'm using, it is an 85/15 beef, which means it's 85% beef and 15% fat. I'm also adding in 2 or 3 teaspoons of dried oregano, along with just another little pinch of kosher salt, and of course a little bit of freshly ground black pepper. I'm going to stir all of this around, and then I just want to add a little bit of water to kind of let everything come together. This way I can let it cook on the stove for like 10 minutes or so to really bring out the flavors. So I added in about a cup of water and also 1 teaspoon of sugar. Normally I also add a bay leaf, but I happen to be out of them today, which is no big deal. I just went ahead and left that out. Once I've let this boil for maybe 10 minutes or so to bring those flavors out, I'm going to add in my tomato paste. I'm using 2 cans, and they are 6 ounces each. Again, I will have all of these measurements for you. We're going to stir in that tomato paste just to help it kind of melt down into the sauce, and it's going to thicken our sauce quite a bit, and it's going to coat everything. Once this is finished, our sauce is ready. So now it's time to start assembling the lasagna. Here I have my pan, and this pan that I'm using is called a half pan. It's a hotel pan is what it is, and it's a half hotel pan. So these are used a lot in professional kitchens, and it's actually my very favorite pan to use to make my lasagna. But of course, you can also do it in a glass casserole dish if you would like to. The first layer that's going to go down is a layer of the sauce, and the sauce is still very hot, so I'm using a coffee cup to scoop it. That's the easiest thing for me, and it's also what my grandma taught me to do, so it's just what I've always done. Today I am also using the no-bake noodles. This is my first time using them here in this video, and I can tell you now that I've actually eaten this lasagna that I did like the convenience of the no-bake noodles, but after I am out of that package I will probably go back to the regular kind of noodles because I did like them more, and I will talk more about that in just a second. The next layer that is going to go down is another layer of sauce, and it's just really important here that you get the noodles covered, like especially in the corners and stuff like that, because they are going to need the liquid and the sauce to cook. Especially today I am using the no-bake noodles, so a nice little layer of the sauce, making sure to cover all the way over each edge. My next layer is going to be ricotta cheese. This is super traditional in lasagna, and it really gives it a nice creaminess. The way that I like to do it is just to grab a big kind of chunk in one hand and then break it apart with my other hand. You don't want it to cover the sauce completely, but just to be in a few bites. My next layer is going to be mozzarella, and you can kind of do this to your own taste. I personally like my lasagna to be pretty cheesy, so I'm going to add anywhere from a pound up to a pound and a half of mozzarella cheese by the time all is said and done. But here I'm just going to add a nice little layer to kind of coat over all of the sauce. Once I get my mozzarella down, I'm going to add another layer of noodles. And as you can see, where I broke the noodles on one side last time, I put a whole noodle over there this time. That way it just kind of helps hold the lasagna together when you go to cut it later on. So what I was talking about with the noodles earlier, what I usually use is just the regular noodles that you have to boil, and I boil them in very, very salty water, like it should be like ocean salty, and I boil them for 8 minutes, and I personally prefer whole wheat noodles. Of course, you can use the white noodles if that is what you like, that's totally fine too. Go ahead and put your noodle layer down, and then it's time for another sauce layer. So I'm going to go ahead and speed things up because these layers are going to be the same, at least these next ones. And I do also want to make a little side note that I also like to put Parmesan in this sometimes in the layers, but this time I decided to only put it on top. So I've done my sauce and then my ricotta, and then I'm putting my mozzarella down right now. I'm going to do another layer of noodles, again alternating where my little broken noodle is just to help it hold together better. And I'm going to put the rest of my sauce on the top of that. Some people like to stop right here, including my own grandmother. She likes to have the sauce layer on top. I personally like to have a cheese layer on top, so I'm not going to stop with this sauce. I'm going to go ahead and do one more big layer of cheese. So this one is going to have my ricotta cheese going down first, followed by another layer of the shredded mozzarella, and I like to put a really nice amount, and then I'm going to put some freshly grated Parmesan cheese on here, and I'm just using my microplaner to grate it. This is a great little tool to have in the kitchen if you don't happen to have one. It's called a microplaner, and you can pick them up at kitchen stores or Amazon or whatever. So if you do this cheese layer on top, you can't really cook your lasagna at a high temperature without it caramelizing pretty quickly. So I like to cook my lasagna at 350 degrees because I do that cheese layer on top, and it's going to take around an hour. But for me, I feel like it really gives the flavors a chance to develop in the oven because it's in there for a good amount of time. If you don't put the cheese layer on top, you can cook it at a higher temperature like 375 or even 400 if you want to, and it's going to take a little less time, maybe 45 minutes, because really all you're trying to do is get the cheese to melt. If you choose though to do the sauce on top, I would put the Parmesan somewhere in the middle because it really does add a nice flavor to the lasagna. I'm going to put this in the oven, and this is what it's going to look like. I want to let this set for about 20 minutes before cutting into it, and this is what my lovely little pieces look like. Thank you so much for watching. Don't forget to subscribe, and I will see you in the next video. Bye!
bestbitesforever.com